Let me just do a topper on just another topic, and then we'll take plenty of questions. Okay. Today, a group on another topic, a group of over 70 leading economists, led by former CEA Chair Austin Goolsbee, announced in an open letter their support for both pillars of the president's economic agenda, the bipartisan infrastructure deal, and the Build Back Better plan. Their letter reinforces the case we've been making to the American people that these historic investments are vital for the strength of our economy and the financial well-being of middle-class families, writing, quote, "These once-in-a-generation opportunities will create millions of jobs, lower costs for American families, and lead to significant economic growth. Both the bipartisan infrastructure deal and Build Back Better agenda could likely ease inflationary pressures." Just one other note for all of you. Vice President Harris is currently, as you know, in Singapore. Her next step will be Vietnam. This trip is an important for the Biden-Harris administration. It's about strengthening and deepening our partnerships with Singapore, Vietnam, and Southeast Asia, because these partnerships matter to the people, prosperity, and security of the United States. I'd also note that her meetings in Singapore today resulted in several substantive deliverables across a range of key issues and reaffirmed the strong U.S. commitment to Southeast Asia and the U.S.-Singapore strategic partnership. Following their bilateral meeting, they announced agreements on COVID-19 and preparing for the next pandemic, climate change, inclusive growth and innovation, and resilient supply chains. Obviously, her trip will continue. Amr, go ahead.
What is your message to the moderate House Democrats who want to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure deal before they'll vote on the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint? And why not just do the bipartisan deal first?
Well, I would first say that the president has every intention of signing each of these pieces of legislation into law. And what I want to be clear with you all about is he supports Speaker Pelosi's proposed path forward to get this process done. I'd also note, and you follow this all closely, but for those of you watching at home, this is a procedural vote, important one, but there are a number of different ways forward here. And this is a debate currently, and a healthy one, an important one, within the Democratic caucus on what different parts of the president's core agenda should be passed in what order. In some ways, that's a high-class problem to be debating. That's what they're discussing. And it's not one that should be unexpected, given there are disagreements about a range of issues, even within the Democratic caucus. That's democracy. But I would note that the president's view is not just 36 years in the Senate, but this isn't his first rodeo, not even his first rodeo this summer. He had one in June and July, and we're going to work closely with Speaker Pelosi. He's going to continue to talk to a range of members. I would note for all of you that the president had multiple calls with Speaker Pelosi in recent days, and also had a call with her leadership team and 15 committee chairs about how vital the Build Back Better agenda is, because it will lower prescription drug costs, reduce the cost of housing and education, strengthen care for veterans, take on climate change, help families afford child care and care for older Americans. So we will continue to be fully engaged, but we understand this is a healthy debate, and we're confident about the path forward.
Have you been able to reach out to some of those moderate lawmakers who have raised concerns?
We have been, from the White House and senior team, in touch with a range of officials and members across all political backgrounds in our caucus, so you can be confident in that.
And on today's vaccine news, is there any expectation that this is going to move the ball and get people who have been resistant off the sideline? And how significant?
Well, it's a really good question, Amr. I think we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, there have been polls several weeks ago, or the last ones I have seen, that have showed that of the percentage of people who are not yet vaccinated, about a third approximately, depending on the poll, would feel more confident if there was final approval by the FDA. We'll see. You saw the president speak to this today. You will see him speak to this more, and you will see senior members of our team speak to this more, because we want to seize this moment and take advantage of course, this FDA independent approval to reach out to Americans who were waiting for that moment to let them know. But I don't know that we have a prediction of how many. Hopefully it will have an impact on those who have expressed concern. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit more about the G7 meeting tomorrow?
Sure.
Are you expecting any specific agreements to come out of it?
This is really a forum, as you know, Steve, to continue the discussion that these leaders had just a few months ago when the president was on his first trip. We certainly know, and many have talked about, their desire to raise questions about the timeline. That's not a surprise, and the president is happy to have that discussion. I'm not, of course, going to get ahead of our national security advisor or the president of the United States, but it's an opportunity to discuss not only our commitment to getting American citizens out, and our Afghan partners who have fought alongside us and many of our allies over the last 20 years, but also to work with them to continue to get their citizens out as well. So expect the discussion will be around that, but I don't know that I'm going to predict big announcements out of it.
I think they will talk about imposing sanctions on the Taliban, anything like that.
Look, I don't think I have more to preview. I think there's a range of topics that G7 members could certainly raise. I know this president lightly touched on this yesterday, but right now our focus day in and day out is on the operations and evacuating and relocating as many people out of the country as we possibly can. Go ahead.
Back to what's going on the Hill. As you know, this isn't the president's first rodeo. Has he considered offering something to the moderates? Is there something that he's willing to put on the table that perhaps would assuage some of their concerns, knowing how legislation and horse trading works on Capitol Hill?
He certainly is familiar with that, but he also is certainly familiar with the leadership of Speaker Pelosi and her ability to get things done. And I would also note that he has been a part of this town and watched healthy disagreements about a range of issues within his own party for many decades. That's a part of the process. But our focus right now is engaging with a range of members from a high-level staff level. We're going to continue to do that, and the president will certainly engage if it is constructive in moving the ball forward. And we, again, are focused on getting this done for the American people.
Just one more follow-up. You said, just want to clarify, you said
Yeah.
that there's potentially a number of ways forward on this, but the speaker has a way forward. You guys back that way forward, and if you're counting votes, that seems like the way forward. What are the other ways forward?
Well, and I was clear, and I appreciate your question, that the president supports the speaker's proposed path forward. What I was trying to get at, and perhaps not articulately enough, is that this is a procedural vote to move the bill forward, and the president is committed to signing each into law, and he's confident in Speaker Pelosi's approach and process, and will stay closely aligned. Go ahead. Jen.
We heard from the Pentagon that all evacuees arriving in the U.S. from Afghanistan are being COVID tested. Is the administration working on a plan to get them vaccinated?
So that is correct. They are being tested, and we are working through offering vaccines and what that process will look like. I hope to have more of an update on that for you in the next day or two.
And one more on COVID. Will the White House convince more businesses to require vaccines now that the Pfizer vaccine has been approved by the FDA?
Will we require or will we push them?
Will you push them to businesses and require certain businesses to, or push them to businesses?
Sure. No, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding your question. We have already started doing that over the last several weeks, and I think you've seen the president speak to this. You've seen a number of senior officials be more forward-leaning, I should say, about the role the private sector can play in mandating vaccines or taking steps with their own workforces. That is always going to be decisions for them to make, but some may assess, and some private sector companies have spoken out about how final approval of the vaccine may help them take that additional step. So we are here, and we are here to be a resource as they have questions, but certainly we're hopeful this will help put in place additional measures around the country. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. There are Taliban fighters right now carrying American weapons. They're wearing American fatigues, the full kit of gear. How is that advancing America's national security interests?
Well, Peter, I think my colleague Jake Sullivan spoke to a version of this last week, but let me tell you, let me reiterate some of what he said. When the president made this decision to bring our men and women home from Afghanistan who were serving, he knew he made that decision not lightly. He made the decision with a clear assessment from his national security team about what the impacts could be. We have taken steps over the past few months to retrograde materials, to bring materials home, to make them not available to the Taliban. We have taken those steps from our military. But our choices at hand, the president's choices at hand, were either to equip the Afghan National Security Forces with the materials and the equipment and the weapons they needed to fight, or not. He made the decision to equip them with the weapons to fight, and we will continue to take steps to retrograde our materials and equipment.
But does the president have a sense that most of the criticism is not of leaving Afghanistan, it's the way that he has ordered it to happen, by pulling the troops before getting these Americans who are now stranded? Does he have a sense of that?
First of all, I think it's irresponsible to say Americans are stranded. They are not. We are committed to bringing Americans who want to come home, home. We are in touch with them via phone, via text, via email, via any way that we can possibly reach Americans to get them home if they want to return home.
There are no Americans stranded is the White House's official position on what's happening in Afghanistan right now.
I'm just calling you out for saying that we are stranding Americans in Afghanistan when we have been very clear that we are not leaving Americans who want to return home. We are going to bring them home, and I think that's important for the American public to hear and understand.
Okay, and then following up on what somebody asked Jake, the president likes to say America is back, but his policies have Americans getting beat up by the Taliban and Afghans handing babies over barbed wire fences. Is that what he meant when he said America is back?
What the president meant is that we are going to continue to lead in the world, including being the leaders in evacuating not just our Afghan partners, not just American citizens, but now also our allies. And we have done that by evacuating approximately 42,000 people over the last month. That is Americans leading. That is our men and women in our military leading on the ground, securing the airport after the Afghans fled and didn't secure the airport, and ensuring that we are taking care of our partners as we promised to. Go ahead.
More broadly, the president was asked about the polling. I'm going to ask you about
Sure.
it now. Would you acknowledge this has been a particularly challenging period for the president? There have been questions about his decision-making among some Americans, reflected in some of the polls.
Well, I would say that, as the president said yesterday, but let me try to answer your question again, his focus right now is on taking the steps and making the decisions that he feels are in the interests of our national security and the American people. And that may mean that there are chaotic scenes. That may mean that there are people disapproving of his decisions. He understands that and accepts that. But he also believes, if you look at the work of his team, and I know this question was asked earlier, that the test of competence and of leadership is not about how you operate on your best day. It's about how you operate when the chips are down, when things are difficult, when you need to adapt and make decisions. And that's what we've seen over the last week. That's what we've seen the men and women in the military do. That's what we've seen our national security team do. A week ago, just over a week ago, we didn't have control over the airport. Now we've evacuated 37,000 people. That is American leadership, and that is certainly competence of his team. But certainly we understand that people are seeing chaotic photos, but he continues to believe that this was a decision that only the commander-in-chief is able to make, and one he had to make for our own long-term national security interests.
Knowing there's about a week or so until the deadline, do you anticipate that the risk to American troops, American citizens, and Afghans will increase? Will there be
You mean
more,
on the ground, Kelly?
Yes. Will there be more desperation knowing that the number of flights out may be dwindling? And if so, how do you adjust for that in terms of your preparation?
Well, I would say that security on the ground is risky and volatile, and we are not naive about that. We are very clear-eyed about that. And that certainly is a factor as the president is considering the August 31st question and the timeline. It is also a factor of the fact that we have expedited over the last 24 to 48 hours our flights and the number of people we've been able to evacuate. And his objective is continuing to focus each day, asking detailed questions about how many more people we can get out each day, because that is a real issue. And that's one of the reasons, and Jake talked about this a little bit earlier, that we continue to adjust and take operational steps as it relates to the perimeter of the airport and as it relates to how we're engaging with American citizens and our Afghan partners about how and when they should come to the airport as well. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Jake mentioned that he'd be able to get us a breakdown of the number of people who are being evacuated who are Americans and the number who are Afghans, but that's something that reporters have been asking for and not getting for several days. Do you have those numbers? And if not, when could we expect to see them?
I certainly understand the question. I know that my colleague John Kirby said a few thousand Americans have been evacuated earlier today. As Jake noted, the vast majority have been Afghans, given this size of the population that we are moving out. And I'm happy to also follow up after the briefing and see what information we can achieve. Go ahead.
One other thing that Jake Sullivan said in his opening remarks was that the president looks forward to working with veterans. The SIV applicants are integrated into American society. And vets and vote vets, a number of other groups, issued an open letter today urging a meeting with the president. In their letter they said that if the Afghan allies are not safely evacuated, it would condemn veterans and survivors of the conflict to a lifetime of moral injury. One, does the president agree with that sentiment? And two, will the president meet with these veterans?
Well, let me first say that we've been in regular contact with a wide range of veterans groups on Afghanistan and will continue to be. And we're in touch with the organizers of this letter to arrange a meeting with senior White House officials to discuss this letter. The VA is also working with VSOs and outside advocates on how to assist SIV applicants, which I know is of primary concern to a number of these groups, as it is to us. And the president, as you know, has the utmost respect for people who have served, as being a father himself of someone who had served. And he knows how determined veterans of our military conflict in Afghanistan are to make sure that the Afghan allies who risk their lives to help our troops are evacuated to safety. I would also note that one of the things the president has noted to many of us over the past couple of days is that as he thought about making this decision, one of the moments or several moments that has stuck with him is that many of you who covered him as vice president know this, but he spent every Christmas day at Walter Reed sitting with Gold Star families and sitting with men and women who had been injured in Afghanistan. Those are veterans too. Those families are families of veterans. Some of those families lost people, and he was not going to send another generation to fight a war that the Afghans were not willing to fight themselves. But I will tell you, we have been in touch. We will continue to be in touch, and I can assure you that the president will look for opportunities to discuss and engage with veterans groups soon.
If I can ask you a question about the FDA's action today.
Sure.
It brings to mind a question that you've been asked several times in this room, and that is, why hasn't the president nominated an FDA commissioner? Is there a specific holdup that you can point to right now that explains why there's not a qualified doctor in the country that the president could nominate for this post?
I can assure you, I wish I had a nominee for the FDA commissioner standing behind that door so that I could present them to all of you. And it is a very good question. And the president wants to nominate the right person to serve in this important post. And yes, of course, there are a range of qualified and talented medical experts and doctors out there. We have not identified the right person yet, and hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. Go ahead.
In keeping with the question of appointments, if you'll forgive me for putting on the Bloomberg hat, has he made a decision on whether
Federal
to
Reserve.
You got it.
I knew it. It's like bingo.
One step ahead of me, yeah. Has he made a decision on whether to reappoint Jay Powell? My colleague Saleha Mohsen reported this weekend that that Secretary Yellen has privately expressed her support for reappointing Chairman Powell. Has he made a decision? When will he make a decision on that?
I don't have anything new for you on this, nor do I have a timeline of when he might make a decision.
Do you have any comments on just Secretary Yellen's apparent preference?
I will leave that to Secretary Yellen and the Treasury team. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Do you have any update? This week is supposed to be the end of the 90-day review into the origins of the coronavirus. Do you have any update on when that report would be released? What can we expect to see publicly?
Sure. It's actually tomorrow, just to mark your calendars. I know Peter's especially excited about it. I would say that it typically takes a couple of days, if not longer, to put together an unclassified version to present publicly, and obviously the president would be briefed first on any findings. So I don't have an exact date for you, but I would expect it will be several days, a couple to several days after tomorrow. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Two questions. Just one on vaccines to clarify an earlier point. We heard the president talk today about he encouraged companies to step up their vaccine requirements, but will today's announcement lead to any new or any additional vaccine mandates from the administration beyond nursing home employees and the stuff that you guys have already announced?
I expect there will be more, sure, as we've said all along. And I would note that my colleagues at the Department of Defense conveyed that they would move in the coming days to mandate the vaccine now that the approval has come from the FDA for Pfizer. So we certainly expect there will be more mandates for factions of federal employees.
And then on Afghanistan, a broader question. Does the president see any substantive differences between the Taliban leadership that exists right now and the regime that existed 2 decades ago?
I don't think we're in a position to make any assessment on that front at this point in time. I would just reiterate, this is not about trust. This is not about providing validity for anyone. Our focus right now is on working to get American citizens, our Afghan partners, working with our allies to get them out of the country. Part of that has been a discussion and ongoing discussions with the Taliban about individuals moving safely to the airport. That's what the focus of our engagement with them has been at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jen, thanks. Just following up on the COVID-19 origins report, is that going to be released in full, or could there be redactions following the process you were talking about on classified documents? Just talk about that, and what is the process in which the administration is going to release this? Are you going to, I mean, is it just going to come out in an email, or is there some way you're going to do this?
I would expect that there would be an unclassified version, and sometimes that means declassification. I can't assess that at this point in time because tomorrow is 90 days, not last week. And then we certainly would make you all aware of what the outcome is. I don't know what format that will take at this point in time yet. It's a good question. Go ahead, Karen.
To follow up on the question that was just asked, when the president said today that he's calling on companies to require the vaccine, he said, do what I did last month. To just get more specific, will he expand that federal employee vaccine requirement and actually mandate it so there's no more option of opting out and doing the testing every week and social distancing?
For all federal employees?
For all federal employees.
I think you're looking more at agency to agency or different factions of the government at this point, but expect there will be more on that front.
And then to follow up, does the administration now see this as an opportunity to refresh the public messaging campaign that you guys have been doing on vaccinations now that there's the full FDA approval?
Yeah, Karen, I mean, it's a really good question. I think what we don't know how to assess is obviously there has been a percentage of people in some of your polls as well who have said, I'm waiting for the vaccine to get final approval, and it's not approved yet. We're sort of going to test that proposition and see. And we are hopeful that there are a number of those people who have said that who will now go out and get vaccinated. And certainly communicating directly with people who are not yet vaccinated is always a priority, but this is a moment to redouble our efforts to do exactly that. Go ahead.
So the president said today he's going to talk more about safely reopening schools. Is there any changes to the administration's guidance that we should be expecting coming forward? When do we expect to hear from him on that?
I would say soon. I think we're still working to finalize what that might look like. But the president is certainly, as a parent and a grandparent himself, well aware, and as somebody who employs a number of us who have children, well aware of the understandable questions that parents have. Some have anxieties, and he wants to be able to speak directly to what his preparations are, how we rely on the science, and all of the steps we've taken through our Department of Education to make sure schools have the resources they need to open and stay open if they apply them this school year. But I don't have a scheduling preview for you at this point in time, but I expect you'll hear from him soon.
In-person learning is still a priority, like still the
yes,
president expects it to be open 5 days a week.
Correct. Nothing has changed in that regard. Now, I will say this. A lot has changed over the last 8 months in that we have provided tens of millions of dollars out to schools, out to states that has been distributed to many school districts who didn't have the resources they needed to replace air conditioning systems or ventilation, to do social distancing in some cases, to ensure they had testing requirements. That has changed. The Secretary of Education has made this one of his top, if not his top priorities, sharing best practices, working directly with school districts. As we have seen across the country in some particular states, we cannot force these states to allow school districts to put in these precautions that will help keep students safe. If they don't put in place the precautions, it's more likely there will be cases, and then they will have to take steps regarding quarantining, etc. But we have taken every step we can think of to engage, to empower, to equip school districts with the resources they have so that they can stay, so they can stay open 5 days a week. Go ahead.
Yes, Jen, what's your reaction to former President Trump this weekend at a rally in Alabama asking his supporters to get vaccinated and then getting booed?
Well, one, we will take anyone who has a big platform out there who wants to encourage people to get vaccinated, doing it. That's a good thing, and we understand that some of the people who are not yet vaccinated are not people who may have Biden-Harris stickers on their cars, and that's okay. In terms of, I think it's just a recognition, as we are very clear-eyed about, that there are still people who are skeptical out there in the country, that there are still people who whether because of misinformation or a range of factors, are not yet getting vaccinated, even though it could save their lives. It means we still have more work to do, and we are committed to doing exactly that. Go ahead.
Jen, thank you. At the risk of this being a yes or no answer, is the president concerned about being put on the spot with these pledges to get Americans out of Afghanistan by the 31st? All those who want to get out of Afghanistan. Is he concerned about being put on the spot with this?
By whom?
By just the general public opinion or whatever, with these pledges from him, from Jake and others, Doesn't it put the president on the spot a little bit?
The president believes it's the responsibility of any president and the United States to convey to any American that if they want to come home, we're going to find a way to bring you home. And that commitment does not end on the 31st. But he is absolutely focused every single day, and I've been in a lot of these meetings, on ensuring we are expediting our processing, we are thinking creatively, we are adjusting operations as needed to get more Americans to the airport and out of Kabul. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'll go to you next. So let me go to Andrew, and then I'll go to you next, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Jake mentioned that the U.S. would try to extract Americans who are outside of Kabul and other parts of the country. Does that apply also to Afghan SIV applicants who are also in that same situation, trapped in rural areas, and they can't make their way to Kabul because the Taliban is controlling the roads?
I don't have anything operational I can preview for you on that front. I can tell you that our commitment to our Afghan partners has not wavered, and we are going to do everything we can to contact them directly, which is exactly what we're also doing to figure out the best way for them to safely get to the airport. But I don't have anything more operationally to preview for you.
Last time you briefed, you were asked about the number of SIV-approved Afghans who chose to stay in the country before the latest sort of chaos that we've seen. You said you might get back to us with an overall figure. Have you been able to dig that up?
It's really a number, and I understand that your question. It's really a number the State Department has, and it is not. Okay, it's not a program that we administer from here. I'm happy to follow up on that, as well as Nancy's question and Kelly's question about the numbers.
The president has said it publicly. Why can't you come up with a number if you're going to say it?
Again, it's a program that's administered by the State Department, and the details of that are something that's under their purview. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. First of all, it was a nice discussion. Actually, not nice, very tragic. I'm from Afghanistan. Everybody know. I don't have anything to say. Everybody know that. Thousands of people, 14,000 people around the airport, outside the airport. No food, no shelter. I know. Every single time I get like 20, 30 phone call, contact, everybody's crying, especially women, men. I know it's difficult for the United States to, just as a woman, as a kind woman, that Afghan people really trust you. They love you so much, and they have expectation that the United States never leave them alone, but it happened. It happened. Just what's your message? Do you have any message, positive message? Because women under a lot of emotionally bad situation like that. Just I need your message to them.
First, let me say that watching these scenes is incredibly heartbreaking and tragic. And, you know, I have been to Afghanistan a number of times, and I've met a lot of these women you're talking about. The president has been there a number of times, has met these incredibly brave and courageous women. And I will tell you that I'm sure that part of the conversation the president will have with his partners and will continue to have with the United Nations is how we can continue to provide assistance, continue to stand up for these women and their rights in Afghanistan. So I don't want them to feel they have been forgotten. They have not. And we will keep them in our hearts. And thank you for your question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. This is related to Kelly's question about the polls and the political fallout. Is the president concerned about the Afghan crisis causing a loss of momentum on all the other things he's been trying to do? It's a pretty unique situation to have such an enormous domestic crisis with the pandemic and a lot of people still not wanting to vaccinate. Now the Afghan thing, which is naturally sucking up all the attention and effort and energy, and his landmark piece of legislation, which is now hanging in the air. Can you just describe, just give us a little bit of an overview of the bandwidth that you have, that he has, for, I'm sure he wasn't expecting to be here, right, back in the summer of freedom.
Well, first, you're not elected president expecting to do easy things. You're expecting to do hard things. You don't come and work at the White House because you're expecting to have easy days. You come to work here because you're expecting to do hard things and be a part of doing hard things. And certainly that's what we're facing right now. But let me give you kind of another way to look at this. We have now vaccinated more people than ever, almost, if not ever, have been vaccinated ever in the United States in history. We are operationalizing perhaps the largest airlift, U.S. airlift in history. We are working toward getting 2 major pieces of legislation through Congress, through the House of Representatives, and then hopefully, and then the president will look forward to signing each into law that will change millions of people's lives across this country, fundamentally address the climate crisis, and invest in industries to make us more competitive for our future. So yes, I know we see polls. Many of your organizations have seen polls, but we also came here to do hard things, and I would say those are a couple of things that we're proud to be a part of. Go ahead.
Yeah, the staff in some of these schools, and the kids even in some of these schools without mask mandates, are getting sick, some of them very sick. Secretary Cardona seemed to hint last week that the federal government could investigate districts that fail to provide a safe return to school. Does the president think there should be consequences, and is there any discussion of tools that the federal government could use?
Well, thank you for your question. As a mother myself, as I know I've noted many times, but it would be incredibly scary to me as my daughter is preparing to go to kindergarten next week if there were not masks in elementary school. And I know a lot of parents in Florida, Texas, and other states around the country are confronting that, and some kids are getting sick. We have talked a bit about steps we have taken to ensure that these superintendents and school districts and teachers are kept whole financially, if there are restrictions put in place, and hopefully prompting them to take a number of the steps that schools and school districts have taken over the past couple of months. We will continue to encourage that. In terms of consequences, I don't think I have anything to preview for you on that front. Thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry I got to run. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Jen.